Who in the room is really, really happy at this moment in time? Who has got the best sales force? Your life is going brilliant. You personally are great. Business is great. Finance is great. Just show of hands quickly. Who is in the best time of their life at the moment in time? Oh, come on, there's got to be one. A little half a hand. Mosting because he's sold his business recently. 2. Have a look around. That was 3 people. So either the rest of you don't want to put your hand up because you fear that you'll be ridiculed, or I'll probably come and ask you questions over it, or maybe you're not as happy as we portray to everybody. Because actually 3 in a size room of, what do we reckon's in here? 50 people? I've done this talk twice now, and I had 5 with 30 people and 4 with about the same. But I've never had 3 out of this room, of this size room. So you think about it, that's quite horrendous. That really we should be all putting our hands up. Shouldn't we?
We've got high expectations, Mark.
Eh?
We've got high expectations.
Yeah, that's can be a problem actually. So I went on the Oxford Dictionary and looked at what happiness actually was. So happiness is a feeling that comes over you when you know life is good and you can't help but smile. Well, there's only 3 of you apparently smiling in here today. Happiness is a sense of well-being, joy or contentment. When people are successful or safe or lucky, they feel happiness. Okay? So, this was me 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, I was really unhappy. I was working 70 hours a week. I've got staff issues. Everybody moans about staff, but, we gain a staff member, we lose a staff member. I'm just about to go on holiday and somebody resigns. We all know that sort of thing. I couldn't switch off. I mean, as an owner, we tend not to switch off anyway, but it wasn't in a good way. I felt like I was going backwards. So my business is 31 years old. This is my 31st year in business. So 5 years ago, I'd been owning it 26 years. You wouldn't have thought after 26 years that I thought I was going backwards. And it wasn't because I wasn't financially secure, I wasn't not running an unsuccessful business. We were very profitable, but personally I felt like I was going backwards. I was always on the phone 24/7. Customers would phone me to speak to me for support, because they knew if they phoned me, I'd probably then go mad at the IT guys that were on call or out of hours or whenever it was, because I'd be able to get results because they didn't think they could go direct to them. Now I know some of you in here feel the same, that customers phone you. I mean, I'm not being funny. If you've got to phone me for support, you've got serious problems. Because I haven't done tech for years now. But that's what the owners of the businesses that I brought on thought they'd got to do, was phone me and speak to me. So I used to see the numbers of the customers come up, and oh God, that sinking feeling when you see the name of that customer that was always the one that phoned you on a Friday night or a Sunday afternoon. So I've got customer issues. We were gaining a customer and we were losing a customer. Then we were losing a customer and gaining one. It felt like we were not going forward. Again, customers was always phones me. Holidays were a nightmare. My phone used to be next to me on the sunbed. I used to hate holidays. If at all possible, I didn't really want to take holidays, because it normally ended up more hassle, because I normally was phoning work trying to work out what the bloody hell they were doing. That's somebody phoning me now. Sorry. I felt like I was blagging it. I know a few people who I've had conversation with feel the same. I was running a business for 26 years, which a lot of people think if you're running one that long, you've got to be really successful. But like a lot of you, I'm uneducated. I don't have a shit load of exam results. I didn't go to university. I ended up running a business by default. Who am I to employ people that are graduates, that sort of thing? It's just somebody didn't sit comfortable with me. I used to think, why wouldn't somebody else just do something other than me? Why wouldn't they sell something other than me? Why is it me that's got to go and get all the big clients? Or deal with the problems? Why is it me when there's some money to be chased? And the finance guy who's employed to do finances couldn't get it in, but I make one phone call to him and they go, all right, mate, I'll get you checked tomorrow. Why couldn't they do that? It's just very frustrating. I'd had enough. I felt suffocated. Suffocated enough that one morning, 5 years ago, I was driving along on the M42 on the way to work. Actually, no, sorry, it was the M40. That's actually the motorway there. It just turns into the M40 in about 200 yards. And I'm sitting in a nice car. I'm not driving around in a heap of junk. I live in a nice house. My kids have all done really well. And there I am sitting in the car on my way to work, which is a half-hour journey. I'm 10 minutes in, and I start to cry. Well, at the time I would have been 46, and I'm crying on the way to work. What the hell? What have I got to cry about? So luckily my dad's a counsellor, and I phoned him up and I said, Dad, I'm crying on the way to work. What do I do? And he says, right, turn your car around, get Becky, who's your wife, get her to phone the doctors and get yourself booked in. I've just had a friend of mine's son who works for IBM jump out the 3rd floor window that weekend. You need to get yourself home and go and see the doctor. What? Yeah, okay. So I drove home, booked an appointment. Luckily I live in a small village that got an appointment for me about literally half-hour later. I walked into the doctor's, sat down with him. He asked me 20 questions. They've got a test they can do. And he sits there and he says, when I've done the test, he went, have you got a shotgun at home? What? What, are we going shooting? No, have you got a shotgun at home? I'm serious. No. I have a .22 rifle, not a shotgun. Okay. Why do you ask? Because you're clinically depressed and 3 people in the village have took their lives in the last 2 years. Wow. This guy, I've walked into the doctors thinking he's going to give me some vitamin C, and this guy's now telling me that I'm clinically depressed, and then he wants to know, he seriously thinks I'm that bad that potentially I could take my own life.
I'm listening.
Wow, that's a new service from Siri. Wow, you couldn't make that up. That's brilliant. Did you do that deliberately?
I'm not near it.
So, oh, I'm laughing at quite a serious thing. Wow. So it's good that you can laugh about these things. So, I'm being filmed by the way. So yeah, that was a massive shock, as I think it would be to anybody. That you were going to work for a normal day, you thought, you've ended up with a doctor saying, have you got a shotgun at home? Because I think you're probably going to top yourself. Shit. Right, this is something now I need to start, taking seriously. So, I was prescribed some tablets, and I went home. And I pretty much stayed in bed for 6 months. I'd go to work for a few hours, I'd come home, but every time I go to work, the sigh of relief when I walked out of that door, it was just like the biggest weight off my shoulders. It was unbelievable. So I ended up, cutting a very long story short, I put managers in place at work, so I didn't have to be there. They knew what was sort of going on, but I never told anybody really. My wife was struggling with it because she's, we've got everything, we've got every possession, we're fine with money, why are you can't get out of bed? My best mate was going, are you on the Smarties? Oh, come on, pull yourself together. And that was probably 80% of the people I knew said exactly the same thing, because they couldn't understand why the hell you couldn't get your own arse out of bed. And to a certain extent I couldn't. And the end for me was, and that isn't a picture of me, but that's how I was, covers over my head. And I got to the stage where I don't care if I don't wake up tomorrow. After 6 months, I don't care. I've had enough. Because if all these trinkets I've got, all the watches, the cars, the suits, the house, everything, I don't really care. Now, next day, I woke up after feeling like that. And it embarrasses me that I felt like that, but that's just life. That's what it is. I decided that I was going to get my arse out of bed, and I was going to go back to work, and I was going to then start to get my life back together. And there was a phrase that came up, I can't remember whether it was on the telly or something like that. You know, I believe a lot in fate. There will come a time when everything was finished. That was the previous day. That will be the beginning. So I got to the stage whereas I was comfortable with what was happening, I knew what I've got to do about it, but that took me 6 months. Now the strange thing about this is I've been a member of Network Group for over 5 years. So those that have been members for over 5 years in here would have known me at that time. But you would have never, ever, ever known that I was suffering. Because I used to think it was an owner's mask we wear. You know, we always have to say things are brilliant, we always have to say everything's great, we never go, oh, it's shit. Because we look up to, you know, we want our peers to think good of us. So you'd have never heard me say anything negative at all. So all of you would have known me in that period of time, and I would have never shown it because I would have seen it as weakness. There's no way I would have ever spoke to you guys about anything, even individually, because I wouldn't want to be belittled. I'd think I was going to be belittled. I'm a boss. I'm meant to be strong. I'm meant to know stuff. I'm meant to be the best that I can be. And that's what we don't do. We don't speak to anybody about it for the fear of, maybe there's a lot more happier people in here than what there is. You know, maybe only 3 people, they were the brave ones to put their hand up just in case they were going to get spooked. Maybe everybody's happy here, but they just didn't want to put their hands up. It's a similar thing. So a lot of us wear masks, and our employees wear masks. We actually think we've got 70% of our staff have some form of mental health issue, which I think is the national average is about 70% of everybody in the country has some form of mental health issue. So my business is not going to be any different, and neither is yours. One day, I came home from work, and I'd never really been a reader, but a book arrived through my door, but I hadn't ordered it. I hadn't got a clue who it was from. It was just from Amazon. There was no invoice, there was no nothing, with a book. Oh, okay. So one night I was sitting there, I think it was summertime, I sat outside in the garden. It's ever such a short book. It's about a postman who does lots of things for people without asking for anything in return. And prior to that, I was a person that I wouldn't do anything for somebody without getting something in return. That's how I was. That's what I thought you've got to be as a businessman. You want to grow the business right, it's go and get what you can. So this book arrived, and I thought, well, someone sent it me, I better read it. And I've never read anything. It was about a postman in America, it's a true story. His name's Fred. That when he was doing his post rounds, and there was a newspaper sticking out of your letterbox, and he knew you were away, he'd go and push it in. He'd stop his van and push it in. If there was a parcel that was outside your front door, and he knew you were out, or you're on holiday, he'd go and put it in his van, and then he knew you'd be back, he'd bring it and give it to you. And that was so you didn't get robbed, or the parcel didn't get robbed. And he did all this just as a matter of course. That was who Fred was. Now at this time, in the old mask-wearing days, and you'd have known it, I had unbelievably low self-esteem. And believe it or not, I sort of do now. It's really, really hard to come and stand up here and speak, but it's something I know is so important to do that I'm almost getting a bit of a taste for it now. But I suffered from unbelievably low self-esteem, but because of my mask, you'd have never known that. this might be the first time you're actually seeing that side of them. And this is the reason I'm speaking. So, what can we learn from Fred? So, everybody can make a difference. You must continue to make value for others, and it doesn't have to cost a penny. We must do and add value above and beyond our job description. Success is built on relationships. Relationships are built on trust. People trusted Fred to tell him when they were going on holiday. I mean, I don't post when I go on holiday now on Facebook and that, because you don't know who else is watching to see that you're not in the house. You know, I'm away now for 2 or 3 days. I live out in the countryside. I don't want my wife to be in the house on her own and somebody see it. You know, we don't do that sort of thing. But with Fred, they trusted him to look after them. And he was only there posting. But he built that trust with them over the years. So, I read Fred, and I thought, wow, I'm like Fred. Well, Fred doesn't sound like he's got low self-esteem. He sounds like he's an absolute stunning guy. I thought I wasn't. It was all about the money for me. That's what I did. It was about money. That was the thing that drove me. But Fred wasn't doing it for money. He was doing it because he was a good guy. Wow, I want to be a good guy. That sounds good. It's just the start of a new chapter for me. So just reading one book was a catalyst 5 years ago. From those of you that knew me 5 years ago, you will know that I'm a lot different now than what I was 5 years ago. So the sort of books I did used to read were these. Get rich quick type. You know. That was what it was about. It was about the money. Which I've realised now that it's not about money. It seriously isn't about money. That's our bookcase at ATG now. We've got over 70 books in there. The company reads, we read. One of the best books in there, though, is 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, which is from a guy called Patrick Lencioni. Very famous author from the States. And it's about how you build trust in a team. Or with anybody, to be fair. So this is Patrick's rules, in effect, his pyramid. So you need to build trust through vulnerability with your team. So I'm being vulnerable to you now. I know it's a thing a lot of you necessarily wouldn't do, stand up here and tell your innermost weaknesses. So you build trust with your team, because he says without having trust in your team, you can't have conflict. And if you haven't got conflict, you can't have commitment. And if you haven't got commitment, you can't have accountability. And if you don't have accountability, you can't have results. So in a roundabout way, if you want to have results, you've got to have trust in your team. And they've got to trust you. And trust comes from vulnerability. So I just want to play you, hoping this will work now, because it's a video that's embedded, a quick video from Patrick where he's talking. He owns a consulting firm. He's wrote lots of books. This is straight off YouTube. You don't have to buy his books. You can go and look at it all on YouTube.
So I once worked with a CEO who's a famous guy. You've seen his picture on many national, international magazines. He's very famous. I worked with him when he was at a previous company, and to be quite frank, he was not a great leader. But he was brilliant and intimidating and famous. And so nobody on his team in this company ever disagreed with him. And the head of human resources, God bless her, went to this guy and said, listen, nobody ever tells you when they disagree. You're not benefiting from the opinions of the people on the team. You have to do something. And they agreed to do 360 feedback, to get feedback from the team, which is sometimes a good idea, sometimes not. Well, they asked my little firm to administer this 360 feedback tool to get feedback from his team. So we did, and we collected all the information from his team members. And then we gave him the results, and he proceeded to share those results with no one. And so finally the head of HR go over the results with your team. They're curious as to what they learned from what you learned. And he said, okay, I'll do it at the next staff meeting. And then he reluctantly, begrudgingly allowed me as an outsider who administered the tool to observe this meeting. And so I sat off to the side on a little chair that had wheels on the bottom of it, which will become relevant here in just a second. And he stood up and he said, okay, it says here I'm not a very good listener. Huh. What do you guys think? And they went around that table and said, well, I think you're a good listener. I do too. I think you're good. I don't think you're a bad listener. I don't have a problem with that. I think you're a fine listener. So do I. And I remembered, because I'd only written one book at this point in my career, and I thought, I could never put this in my books. Nobody would believe this, right? So he said, okay, good. The next one here says I'm not a very good, I don't give enough feedback or praise. Huh. I thought I'd gotten better at this. What do you guys think? Yeah, I think you're great at it. I think you've gotten much better. I don't think there's a problem with it. All the way around the table. And this is where, and I laugh about it now, but I remember this well. I was sitting there on my chair thinking, if I have any integrity as a consultant, this is where I have to lose a client or put one in jeopardy, right? So I got on my little chair and I was like, eek, eek, eek. And I remember this well, I'll never forget it. I rolled up right next to this famous CEO and I said, excuse me, but you guys are the only people who filled this survey out, so somebody had to write this. Very quiet in the room. So the head of marketing, poor guy, slowly raised his hand, said, yeah, I think you could give more. I'd like to get more. I mean, my team would like to get more feedback and praise from you. And, you know, they only hear from you if they screw up, and I think it'd be nice if you told them if they did something well. So, yeah, I think that I wrote that on my form. I could vouch for that. I think you could improve in that area. Silence. Till the head lawyer goes, not me, I think you get plenty of praise. Everybody else said, so do I don't understand what he's talking about. And they killed the guy. I'm melting. Now, the moral of that story is this. That's the day, first of all, that CEO lost all credibility. Secondly, it's when that's how he sent a message to the team, I'm never going to be vulnerable, you guys shouldn't be either. You know, eventually that company spun out of control and went out of business or sold off for a fraction of its worth. You know what the Wall Street Journal said? They had strategic problems. They had some errors in their product. But those were downstream symptoms of the real problem. The real problem was that there was no trust on that team. And it started with the leader who couldn't be vulnerable. Now, he didn't have to do anything weird. All he had to do was stand up there and say, hey, you guys, I know I've got some issues. I've heard about this in performance reviews throughout my career. And, well, my wife tells me this once a week or so. And I know that I'm not great at it. I'll give it a shot. I'll try to get better. I don't know that I'll ever be great, but I'm going to try, and I appreciate your feedback. That's all he had to do. But he stood there instead like the emperor with no clothes, with his big old bottom hanging out, like, how do I look, guys? And they're like, you look fine, boss. And everybody said, don't admit you've got problems.
Any ideas why those employees wouldn't tell the truth to the boss? Have you got any ideas?
Fear of judgment
Fear.
lack of trust.
Lack of trust. Anything else?
You want to be vulnerable.
Want to be vulnerable. That's what I wrote down, I think. Fear of being rejected, fear of being singled out. You know, asking you guys to who's happy. You know, only 3 put the hand up. Maybe there's 20, but you didn't want to be singled out. You wouldn't be ridiculed for being happy, but you know, telling your boss something that he necessarily might not want to hear. If you want success in your business, then you need to have trust running throughout, and that can take time. The quickest way to build trust is through vulnerability. We can all be classed as trustworthy, but you have to be vulnerable to be trusted. How do we start to build trust? Think about it. How do you make friends now? It might sound a bit stupid, but how do you make friends? How do you fall in love? I'm not expecting you to put a red pair of silky pants on and some roses for your employees, but you know how to fall in love. Surely all of you at some time in your lives. Maybe not all of you, but building trust is just how we build relationships. Nothing too complicated. You've got to do what you say you're going to do. So as an owner, when you say you're going to do something, for God's sake do it, that's a really quick way to lose trust. Be vulnerable to one person at a time. Now I know I'm doing it to a group of you here, but it's so much more powerful when it's a one-to-one at work. It's the words we use. It's how we show up. It's about being honest. And above all, being ourselves. Because we should attempt to be somebody that we're not. And the masks that we all wear isn't us. The mask, what we think other people want to see of us, or want us to be. A lot of us in here are leaders. Most of us are leaders. So the first thing you've got to do as a leader is to lead. That's why you're called a leader. It's about going first. You can't expect them to be vulnerable to you first, then you'll be vulnerable back. You've got to be first. So, question for you to think about. Could you be vulnerable with your employees? Now, for all the answers that we saw earlier on, because of what I've stood up and done today, do you think I'm weak for doing that? The fear that I had for not doing it to my employees and wearing the mask was that I thought I'd be ridiculed. You guys going to ridicule me now? Because actually, if you did, I'm not bothered. Why would it bother me? Because if that's how you think, you don't mean anything to me if that's how you're going to treat me. So if you've got employees that are going to do that to you, then maybe they shouldn't be employees. So I don't think I'm weak. I think it's probably one of the most powerful things you can do. Because I'm putting trust in you lot that you won't ridicule me. That all 50, 60 of you won't. You won't all take the pee. You won't all think I'm weak. You won't all now stop speaking to me because you think, well, he's not a boss. Because look at him. So it's had the opposite to what our brains tell us. So what do you think in your business? Actually, everywhere, but in your with businessmen. So what would you think in business ladies? What do you think would happen if you had trust in your workplace? So staff would feel included, and they'll work as a team. You'll all know each other's strengths and weaknesses. Because people will be prepared to tell you their weakness. You'll have a newfound open and honesty in the workplace. Staff will feel empowered. Your staff retention will increase, guaranteed. It creates a caring environment in the workforce. Staff will tell you when they're struggling rather than failing and letting you down and letting themselves down. But it's the other thing is, you'll be also open to sharing that you can't do what you think you're going to do. Because as a boss, I know, I used to think I used to know everything. I had to know everything. Everybody used to come to me for the answer, I used to give it them. So I had to know it, because I thought that's what a boss had to do. But now I'm quite comfortable going, I don't know how to do that. And the difference is how they jump on it and sort it out. It's unbelievable. So that's just from having trust in the work. So still feel like it's not for you? Still feel like you couldn't do it? I chose the title at the start, How to Earn More Money in as Quick a Time, because you know what? That's what most people want. That's what most people in the bar of a night, how much do you charge? Oh, you're £60, how can you do it for 60? We're only 25. You think it's about money. It's not. So since I've been working on this for the last probably 4 years, I've reduced my working hours at ATG from 70 hours to 26. I finish at 3 o'clock every day, and on a Friday I go and take my wife out for lunch at midday. I haven't had one phone call while I've been here. I mean, I've been here since Monday night. I've had no loss of staff for 4 years. Before that, we were losing staff all the time. 4 years. Think about that if you think about money just in recruitment costs and training. Now getting on. We've had a 24% increase in turnover last year. Oh, that's all right. 24%, that's good. We did a 110% net profit increase last year. We've been working 26 hours, not 70. Because I'm allowing people now to do the job that they're paid to do. Because we've got trust. And if you think of Patrick Lencioni's pyramid, we can't hit the figures if we haven't got trust. So I'm working less hours, I've lost no staff, and I'm earning more money. Bit of a no-brainer. I wish I'd have known that 30 years ago. We've won multiple industry awards. We've never won an award after 26 years. We've never won one. We've won 4 now. In fact, this week, Kate, who's my office manager, she's just been, she's in the nominations for one of the best women in tech. Because 2 of the guys in one of the departments sent off the thing for it. I knew nothing about it. Because they work as a team now. Nobody's siloed. Do you know what the best thing in the world is for me out of all of that? I'm the happiest I've been for years. So I'm earning actually less money than what I did 5 or 6 years ago, because we were a lot bigger company then. But I know where I'd rather be. I'd rather be where I am now, happiest, spreading the word now about trust and what a difference it can make to you and your workforce, because it's not about the money. So top 10 things I've learned about trust. So, trust is the #1 leadership competency skill that's needed today. Trust builds people into teams, but it takes time. You know, I've been doing this now 4 years, and I've probably only had it right for the last 2. It's going to take you 2 years to get it done. You know, like if you're going to do traction, that takes you 2 years. As a visionary that I was, I thought I'd do traction in 6 months. No, it took 2 years to get it properly right. But we can all learn it. It's not hard. The biggest reason their employees don't trust their management is that management don't trust their employees. Loads of you moan about your staff. Go speak to them. Be open to them if you've got problems. Speak to them. They'll know. They'll know because they're hiding as much as you are. Leaders are responsible for the people, not the results. The people are responsible for the results. Think about it. What's the easiest business you ever win? Referral. Why? Because trust's transferred from your existing client to the one that's been referred. It's the easiest sale you can ever do. A referral business. Business innovation stops if you don't have trust, but flourishes when you do. So all of us in the IT, it's moving so quick. We need stuff, we've got to change. Look, a few years ago we were all breakfast, now we're MSP, now we're looking at MSSP. Never mind the MSP 2.0 that we missed in between. So we've got to be looking to innovate all the time and curve jump to whatever the next new thing is. Because we'll all be dead. AI's coming out, well AI's here, but in our world, AI's going to fix most of the problems that your tech's fixing now. You know, all your continuing partners out there, you want to see how much AI they're investing. Wow, your techs won't have a job to do. But if you've got trust in the workplace, they'll be your staff, not just you, will be thinking what they can do next, what you can do next, what curve jump you can do. The best way, people ask all the time about, how do you handle millennials? Trust them. That's what they want to do. They want to be trusted, they want to be part of something. To trust them to do the job. It's the little things that make a difference. Like putting Kate in for the award without anybody else knowing. It's remembering somebody's birthday or kid's birthday at work. Just little things. Remembering people's missus's name. Giving them a day off when you know they've got a problem. About them to have a mask and feel guilty for leaving the job. There's tons and tons of little things. They don't have to cost nothing. Sitting down with people and being honest and being yourself doesn't cost anything at all. You can all be considered trustworthy, but you've got to be vulnerable to truly be trusted. Okay, so how do I start? The first thing you've got to do is recognise some of the things I've been saying and admit it to yourself. Take your mask off for 2 minutes and look at yourself in the mirror and say, do I really want to do this? Because it's not hard, it's a lot of soul searching. But when you come out the other end, you'll have a hell of a lot more stronger business and you'll be a lot happy. I'll ask the question, are you happy? And everybody will put their hand up. Go and look at Patrick's videos online. They're all on YouTube. There's tons of them. Patrick Lencioni, he doesn't hide any of his stuff. It's all up there. Go and buy his books. It's really, really good. Incidentally, I found out a couple of years later the guy that sent me the Fred Factor book was Phil Morgan. I found out years and years later. Go and look at Patrick, because he talks a hell of a lot of sense. And I was in London last week at the World Business Innovation Conference, and Simon Sinek was there, Stephen R. Covey, top 100 influential speakers, unbelievable conference for 2 days. 3 of them were talking about trust in the workplace now is a game changer. And these guys are paid 150, 200 grand to talk for an hour. So there's some, there's something in this. Brené Brown was one of the first people. She's got a thing called Power of Vulnerability of her books. But if you've got Netflix, she's just released a Netflix video. So if you don't want to watch, you don't want to read. Sorry, if you don't want to go online on YouTube, she's got a video on Netflix. It's there. It's brilliant. And she talks about the power of vulnerability in the workplace. That's me. Thank you.